Governor of the Central Bank, Godwin Emefiele there. We just lost that feed very there. We apologize to viewers. Of course, the governor is was talking about the considerations before the Monetary Policy Committee, talking about the modest stability in FX reserves and exchange rate that was achieved since the July Monetary Policy meeting decisions. Now, he says those gains are now under, quote, threat of reversal because inflation is picking up 11.23% in the month of August, and capital flows is also reversing. We've seen the major outflows from the equities market or the stock market also over since the month of July. So the central bank governor there is saying these are key issues now, part of the considerations at the two-day meeting. So of course, with the oil prices trending strongly higher at about $82 a barrel early today, of course, the central bank is asking the government to improve very quickly its fiscal spending into the critical sectors that will help the government create jobs and make sure that the economy moves forward. Of course, it's looking at improved fiscal spending. That's the message that the central bank and the monetary policy is sending to the government. Earlier, the central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, spoke about the underperformance of key monetary aggregates during the period under review, of course, between July and September today, when the meeting is now concluded and they're presenting their communique. We've seen pressure also from the external market. You've seen emerging markets, stock market, according to the MSCI, down about 9.2% since year to date. But of course, we've seen the S&P 500 grow by the same margin within the period. So inflows of investments back into the United States and US-based assets is a major issue. Money growth, M2, we heard that earlier from the governor as well. Net foreign assets in terms of those inflows very significantly higher, 27.94%, much higher than what was projected for the a period under review. But net domestic credit was a little bit was down at about 6.27% on aggregate against a projection of 12.45%. Credit to the private sector, the governor says that was a little bit higher, almost 1%, 0.81% last month. That's the month of August, against 0.36% or 0.13% in the month of July. Of course, that's still much lower than the projection of 5.46%, which was projected. All these are some of the things that we've heard from the governor. But our panel here in the studio, let's get to the studio here. And our studios are the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Ayodeji Ebo, who is the managing director at Afrinvest Securities. Ayodeji, comment quickly on what you've heard from the governor regarding the considerations and how the market has performed so far, leaving us right now trying to still get that feedback to hear what the final decisions are. What's your thoughts?
Yes, interesting. The CBN governor has raised concerns regarding that the fiscal authority needs to get as fast as possible in terms of budget implementation. But there's something that is also worrying here is that we look at the last data that was published by the National Bureau of Statistics on actual budget performance. So if total revenue based on their target was around 2.4 trillion, and you have a projection about 2.7 trillion. So for mostly what would suffer is the capital expenditure that have that tendency of jumpstarting the economy. So most times you will continue to, in terms of when you see your projection, recurrent expenditure carrying the bulk of it. Our service to debt, debt to GDP ratio, or debt to, if we look at debt to revenue ratio based on the projection, is about 69%. It means that out of every 1 naira that we make, 69 kobo is being used to service our debt. So these are some of the concerns that the CBN is being faced with. On their part, they've set up on structure how to support the real sector in terms of the modulated, differentiated CRR and to lend at single-digit rate. But what we may see is that maybe CBN may also go further to set up maybe some specific funds like we've seen in the past. But the challenge, the downside to that is we've not really seen in terms of the impact of some of these funds, say for the agricultural sector that we've seen some improvement within that space.
Ayodeji, thank you very much. Talking about those special interventions from the central bank, we've seen that a bit of that in the power sector. We saw that in aviation as well as agriculture. Let's go downtown to our studios at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, where Christian Orajakwe from Kodos Capital and Victor Oshiazo, who is from Fidelity Securities, are still with us on this conversation. Let's get on to you first. Christian, from what we've heard so far from the central bank governor, what's your take on where we are at the moment and what these considerations are? The governor says some of the modest stability that has been recorded since July meeting is now under threat.
Yeah, I think very clearly the tone of the MPC today is somewhat consistent, with its tone at the last meeting, to be honest. At that last meeting, when you look at the minutes of the meeting, it was quite clearly stated that inflationary pressure, inflationary risk remains on the upside, and also at that time we started seeing pressure also on the FX reserves. And whilst at